Hello, I'm Anna McLaughlin. I'm the Program Director for Transportation Program Management here at AASHTO. And I'm really happy to welcome you today to webinar 76 in the Transportation Asset Management webinar series sponsored by FHWA and AASHTO. We have lots of content to get to today, but before we get to that, I just wanted to take advantage of my captive audience here to share two upcoming events of interest. Next week, the National Conference on Transportation Asset Management is meeting in Chicago. I'm hoping to see many of you there. We'll put the link to the registration in the website. We are also going to have a peer exchange there as well on asset management. So hopefully some of these names that are on the webinar today will also be faces next week. And then the Committee on Performance-Based Management, which is the parent committee of our Asset Management Subcommittee, will be having its annual meeting in Baltimore, September 23rd through the 25th. We'll also put the registration link in the chat here. We are having an asset management peer exchange, but for both of these meetings, we're actually having peer exchanges as provided by the AASHTO's Performance Management Technical Services Program. They're open to all state DOTs. So if you're interested, I hope to see you there. And if you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out via email, or you can chat me in the webinar and I can get more information to you. But now on to the reason you're all here today. Our webinar today will feature presentations from the principal investigators on 3 leading NCHRP asset management research projects, showcasing their key findings that are shaping the field and setting best practice standards, as well as noteworthy activities from ongoing projects that seek to standardize methods for assessing risk and implementing resilience. Today's webinar is one in a long line of webinars. The series has been going on every 2 months back from 2012 on a variety of topics in asset management. For more information on this webinar series, you can visit our TAM portal at tam-portal.com. That's tam-portal.com. Again, we'll put the link in the chat. From there, you can click on events in the main menu and register for any upcoming webinar. Here on the TAM portal, you'll find archives of previous webinars and links to the slides, and a recording from today's webinar will be posted on the site as well. The TAM portal is home of the AASHTO Subcommittee on Asset Management. For more information on the subcommittee, you can visit the TAM portal, tamportal.com, and click on Subcommittee on Asset Management under the Community menu. If you have suggestions for future webinar topics, we would love to hear them. Or if today you have questions for the presenters during our webinar, you can put your comments or questions using the Zoom chat feature. We are going to hold questions and answer during a Q&A session at the end after our speakers. At that time, we'll invite participants to unmute and ask their questions or share their thoughts during the group discussion session at the end. So until then, we hope you be careful to keep your audio connection muted. If you haven't already, please mute yourself so that our presenters are not interrupted. We really appreciate that. Thank you. And this is where I would turn it over to our friend Tasha Clemens, Senior Transportation Specialist at the Federal Highway Administration, to give an FHWA welcome and introduction. But Tasha couldn't be with us today in person, so we have a pre-recorded welcome video that we're going to share now.
Abigail, the sound isn't sharing with the video. I think you might need to reshare the video and select share sound.
Thank you, Anna, and hello and good afternoon or good morning to everyone joining us today. My name is Tasha Clemens, and I represent the Transportation Asset Performance Team in the Office of Infrastructure within Federal Highway Administration. Federal Highways, in cooperation with the AASHTO Subcommittee on Asset Management, is very pleased to sponsor and be in partner for this webinar series. As you know, research is the best way for the TAM community to forge cutting-edge developments in our field. And so today's webinar will showcase key findings from recently completed NCHRP projects and syntheses, as well as noteworthy tasks in active projects. With compelling presentation from principal investigators, this session provides an insight into the asset management community's priorities and advancements. Federal Highways, I would like to say, is very excited and very pleased to say that we have reached the 76th webinar in this series. And Federal Highways Transportation Asset Performance Team, we are committed to increase knowledge and capabilities at transportation agencies across the U.S. I do, however, encourage you to visit us online for more information and to gain access to available resources. You should be able to see the address on screen. And finally, I just want to say, I'm sure you will enjoy today's presentations. Now, I would like to turn it over to Hyana Parks of Spy Pond Partners to give an overview of today's webinar, to review today's agenda, and to introduce our guest speakers. Hyana?
Thank you. I'm Hyana Park with Spy Pond Partners. For this webinar, the primary learning objectives are to promote key findings from recently completed projects and synthesis, plus a current project. Highlight noteworthy research activities and ongoing projects. Build awareness of developments in ancillary asset management, AI integration with TAM, risk management, and resilience building. And as always, share lessons learned, ideas, and knowledge with the asset management community. I will introduce our speakers before each presentation, but in brief, they are Dr. Abhijit Sarkar from the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute, Dr. Hala Nassereddine from the University of Kentucky, and Dr. Aimee Flannery from Jacobs. Time permitting, we will have an open group discussion at the end. Just another reminder, please submit your comments or questions using the Zoom chat feature anytime during the webinar. We'll make sure to cover them at the end of the webinar. And as you all know, the slides and videos will be available on tam-portal.com. One final note for our presenters: to keep things moving along on schedule, I may interrupt when we get to about 5 minutes before the end of your time slot, so that you can wrap up your presentation if needed. All right. We will now hear from the first presenter, Dr. Abhijit Sarkar. Dr. Sarkar is a senior research associate in the Division of Data and Analytics at Virginia Tech Transportation Institute and leads the computer vision and machine learning team. He's also a lecturer at Virginia Tech. His research focuses on machine perception, autonomous systems, sensor fusion, data de-identification, cardiac biometrics, transportation safety, multimodal data, and naturalistic driving data. I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation. Hopefully all of these things get synthesized in your research. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you for inviting us to present our findings from the NCHRP 2312. I will share my slide. Please let me know if you can see the slide.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, that's perfect. So my name is Abhijit Sarkar, and this is our final summary that we find during our work for the NCHRP 2312, Artificial Intelligence Opportunities for State and Local DOTs, research roadmap. The background for this one was that over the last few years, particularly since the 2012 onset of the new era of artificial intelligence, state and local Department of Transportations, they are being asked to solve complex problems, and oftentimes artificial intelligence being a very effective tools, there is a need for implementing them to address some of these issues. And this can include asset management for one such cases, but safety and introduction of automated vehicles, how to integrate that into our systems, what are needed for those systems as well. These are part of the questions that often we are asked. However, it's interesting that the way and the pace that this artificial intelligence is changing, there is no strategic guidance that state and local DOTs can actually use for this. So there needs to be, in order to develop and implement this artificial intelligence in the work, there needs to be more guidance, policies, and standards. But unfortunately, that's not present. It's interesting that means when we started this project in 2021 and means we are sitting in 2025, a lot has happened. And means in this presentation, you will not hear about large language models or chat GPT kind of words because means it's changed over the last few years and means that's the pace that we are currently in. So this also shows that means why this research needs to be iterated as well as like updated every few years. Now, the main objective for this project was to develop a research roadmap that will help and guide state and local DOTs to better understand artificial intelligence, understand what activities are suited for the specific applications that DOT care about, and potential way that those could be applied in their day-to-day research. Now, this roadmap will build upon existing research that has been done over the last 10 to 15 years, and also going through an outreach towards the transportation community. So it's the one way that what has happened, and another way is that what is needed. So just the marriage of these two systems. And definitely the focus of this research will be the AI applications targeted for state and local DOTs and being relevant to different variety of research organization. And NCHRP is definitely the main funding agency, but means this can go beyond NCHRP to different federal agencies and state agencies as well, and their partners for sure. Now, to generate this additional research ideas was also part of this project. When we discussed with different DOTs, one way was to just stimulate the idea that means how the AI can be really leveraged, and how they can help us to build new ideas and accelerate some of these areas that we are interested in. So this is the overall roadmap. This is the overall structure of the project. So for the first part of the project, and I believe that you can see my cursor here, the first part of the project, we try to accumulate all information from over the last 12 years of research that has happened. And as a result, we find out that what are the key research topics that AI is currently developing, what are the transportation topics that state and local DOTs are interested in, and what are the AI tools and softwares currently available. But out of all these cases, one thing that is very important to understand is that what is the technological maturity of these AI topics, because there has been a lot of promises, but some of these promises may not be suited for the current application. So that's why the technological maturity is very, very important for us. Now, once we do the literature review, the next one that we did was to reach out to state and local DOTs and talk to them. We did in different phases. One phase was that we did one-to-one interview with DOT personnel at different levels of expertise and management. Secondly, we did a collaborative workshop. This is the workshop 1, where we actually bring all this state and local DOT personnel together and get their collective information about the current need and future need for this. Once that is done, we develop a set of strategic plan. And we created 15 sets of research roadmap proposals. And those 15 sets of research roadmap proposals were again sent to all state and local DOTs. And in a workshop 2, we get their feedback to refine these research roadmaps as well. So once we completed that, then as part of that, we finalized the final research need report. We also provided a workforce development and knowledge transfer plan, and also a dissemination plan. Now, in today's session, I will just briefly touch upon all the key findings for that. But means this research report is now published, and you can go through this and definitely send us feedback, and if you have any questions later on. So, coming back to the first one, which was that understanding that what the interaction between the AI and transportation. Now, when we first started this work, this was like really difficult for us to understand, because there has been so many work that has happened in literature, and it means the pace and changes that it's happening, it was difficult for us. So reading through all the papers was not an option. So what we did was that we rather took the use of artificial intelligence, and in this case, the large language models, to scrape the topics and the titles and the keywords from 65,000 publications over the last 11 years from top conference and journals, and then try to understand that what could be some of the connections between them. So one part was that trying to understand, for example, if there is a paper which says that computer vision, deep learning, and support vector machines, and this can be the AI solution, and the highly autonomous vehicle and pedestrian activity recognition, these are the solution space, or the problem space that we are currently working on. So similarly, for any of the other cases, like the advanced driving assistance system, automobile drivers, driver distraction, gauge tracking, these are the problem space, and computer vision, neural network, pattern recognition, statistical test, these are the solution space for us. So we use large language models and we use topic modeling to understand that what are the connections between that. So what is the problem space and what is the solution space, and we connected them together. Once we did that, we find some really interesting insight from that. So these are all the transportation topics that we through the SMEs as well as through the workshops we finalized on these transportation topics, and there are a total of 21 transportation topics there. The first thing we realize is that in literature, the way that they are solved, most of the problems are very much interlinked. So if I want to solve traffic management, many components also have overlaps with road safety. It has overlap with highway management and design. It has with different like vulnerable road users, and as well as like pavement and other work zone analysis. So this was the first finding we got, and means when we look at that whole system, it looks really messy. However, means we have presented this whole data in the document, but the key idea is that everything is very much interlinked. So solving one problem separately is possible, but when we interlink them with other areas and that collaboration happens, then the solution becomes much effective. So the same system is for between the problem space and the solution space. Now this slide is really busy, so I just want to walk you through of this part, that this is the problem space, like that for the travel behavior or traffic management, and these are the solution space. And the solution space could be control systems, very basic control systems, numerical methods and optimization, deep learning methods. So these all can be part of this. And for traffic management specifically, as we can see, that means a large part of this work has been solved through simple numerical method and optimization, which is and the way we define artificial intelligence is not necessarily a deep neural network or machine learning, but rather we expand this to more common cases, starting from telecommunication to control systems to statistical machine learning as well. Now, this is just for one cases. And if we just look at many other cases, and I will give just one example here, which is that for the pedestrian safety and VRU management for this. So most of the solutions that has been present in the last 10 to 12 years, they use deep neural network, they use traditional machine learning. However, there are like lots of cases, mathematical modeling and simulations were part of it. Imaging, statistical machine learning, there has been part of that, that as the solution as well. So again, the highlight is that in order to solve a problem and in order to adapt artificial intelligence, maybe there is a multiple path, number one. And number two is that those paths can be also intertwined, and there could be multiple disciplines that we need to be aware of and we need to be expert in order to solve even a single problem. So this again and again talks about multidisciplinary work and means collaboration. That's one of the findings we have. When we start talking about the maturity of this, mostly we have find that means there has been an increase in deep learning, big data analysis, and computer network and telecommunication. Data and deep learning and neural network came again and again in most of these cases, which also shows that means there has been a great amount of literature which are to back this level of maturity. Well, we find that traditional machine learning and statistical methods kind of slowing down a little bit, but there is one another feedback is that it's not necessarily that means we should not care about that, because many of these has taken a new form in both big data analysis and both the deep learning based methods. Definitely the biomedical engineering, and which often comes from the safety point of view, and the evaluation and analysis, they keeps the same. So these are still like key topics that we should be aware of. We additionally looked at 106 projects selected between 2017 and 21 from the Transportation Research Board database. And we have seen that there is an increasing use of AI in those projects. So definitely this also shows the maturity and the inclusive effect of AI in the process. So in general, the key findings that we have is that the transportation topics are independent, interdependent with each other. A series of AI methods are used to solve this problem, so it's not a single method. And we see a varying impact of different AI fields on transportation research. Also in our report, we have provided a set of tools for this AI ecosystem, which is on different AI software platforms that someone can adapt, the big data management, big data processing, and their cost and benefit. So because different problems has different scale, so this cost and benefit could be really, really important for us. Now, once we know about the current state of AI and transportation, the next state that we went for is the current state of AI in Department of Transportation. And that's where we needed feedback. We needed real information from people. And I'm thankful to everyone who joined and who responded to our call and spent their time with us, either through interview or through workshops. We mostly tried to understand their past, present, and future. And in there, like what has been their previous priority, what is their current priority, what are the challenges that they are currently finding at this point, and also what is their future direction and their long-term focus. And as part of this, many times the partnership with other agencies came up multiple cases, and it can be industry, it can be academia, or it can be different other partners that they have. In terms of the summary of the feedback that we got is that there were some additional areas that we were not initially thinking was included, which were document management, plan review under highway maintenance, project management and resource allocations, and cybersecurity. So these were included in our roadmap following the recommendation from DOT personnel. There has been continuously few areas that came up. Number one is that lack of standardizations of the AI-based solutions. And this is true even because this is a moving target and the system and the AI community is growing. There has been, particularly for transportation, there is no standardized solutions, there is no standardized database and benchmarks, which is very much standard in the AI community. In the practice, oftentimes there are a lot of lacking in understanding, and particularly for the readiness of AI. They are component in terms of like where we should trust in AI versus where there are some fallacies in the cases. There has been many examples in terms of where DOTs are already using part of AI, but they are not certain and they are not very confident about using them for real world applications, either due to their explainability for the system or due to their accuracy of the system. Data availability, because data is often very costly, those data availability, their quality, understanding the data, and exploratory data analytics are often missing in the pipeline. And finally, one major problem is the workforce and collaboration. It's very difficult to hire, particularly because they are from computer science and other disciplines, and they are often being recruited by industry. So that's where it is very difficult to hire in DOT settings and then develop a constant and stable workforce. So with all this information, we actually created a research roadmap for that to go forward. And oftentimes we looked at the our research roadmap development has been very much inspired by the NCHRP strategic plan for artificial intelligence and research and development, which is like short-term to long-term, specific to generic ideas. So we have tried to cover a broad spectrum that can cover all DOTs, and because different DOTs may have different needs. So these are the total 11 cases, and we mostly focused on 6 research areas: the workforce and infrastructure development, readiness and evaluation of artificial intelligence, challenges in adopting AI, current practices and prioritization, external collaborations, and policy and planning. Now, one particular case maybe I want to highlight here is that create sustainable and reliable sources of data sets. Oftentimes we have seen that means different DOTs collect data sets of their own, but if those data are properly annotated and shared with another DOTs, that can definitely save cost, save effort, and also it can add diversity to our systems. Now, we have tried to develop roadmaps that are well distributed across these 6 areas, and 6 areas are again coming from our literature review and from the interview and workshops that we had with DOT personnel. All these research roadmaps are their budget and their durations, the expected and estimated budgets and durations have been proposed, and you can find a more detailed description for each one of them in the final report that we have published. Now, there are definitely a few challenges that we have identified in part of implementing any of these roadmap and overall AI in transportation. The first thing that comes to our mind is that the trust in AI, because this is a many of these models are black box model, there has been a growing trust. The capability of integrating the AI in the existing system, because we already have a pipeline, and in that pipeline, how these new AI systems, the software and tools could be integrated is a problem. How high quality data is definitely another part. Potential bias, and means these AI systems are often been told to have bias in their systems, and that's where this bias can be demographic bias, this bias can be data-driven bias. So this bias has been a problem, and we still don't have, we still have not solved this. Okay. The next one is the lack of workforce and expertise, and definitely the model exploration, that nowadays we are talking about hallucination. If you are using ChatGPT kind of systems, then the model oftentimes hallucinate and give answers that it is not very confident about. So finally, that the workforce challenge, and I believe that this is very much prevalent for all fields, but including the asset management groups. But there has been an existing, and for future applications, workforce challenges has been one big part. Like oftentimes we find that that there is a scarcity of skilled workforce, specifically when we are looking at in the intersection of maybe civil engineering and artificial intelligence. There is a lack of proper job description and the qualification needed to fill those positions. So it's both from the management side as well as from the other areas. There has been one particular highlight was that means there has been a lack of transparency and communication between the leadership and the people that are really executing this task. That's one area as part of this overall workforce development has been highlighted. And definitely lack of established training mechanisms. That's also part of it. So one of our research roadmap actually focuses on developing this kind of training materials, developing this kind of more focused and very much, for example, pavement related statements that needed to be there. So in conclusion, we presented a total of 11 research statements for developing a roadmap. And we reviewed current practices, we reviewed the maturity of the field. We discussed the challenges and scopes at DOT. We have involved DOTs in order to get feedback to finalize and refine these research roadmaps. And we also have provided a dissemination plan. I didn't discuss that dissemination plan here, but means you can see that dissemination plan as part of this final report. But there is one question that I want to leave you all, because the pace that AI is changing, I believe that means we need to really think about how to update these research roadmaps in a continuous basis. I want to thank my team. This was a big effort with everyone at Virginia Tech Transportation Institute. So a big thank to my team here, and also Sid Mohan, who was the COR for this one, for his continuous support, and also NCHRP for funding this project. So thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer any questions at the end of this presentation. Thank you. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Abhijit. We'll now hear from our next speaker, Hala Nassereddine. Dr. Hala Nassereddine is an associate professor of construction engineering and project management in the Department of Civil Engineering at the University of Kentucky, in addition to holding an appointment as a research engineer for the Construction Engineering and Project Management Group at the Kentucky Transportation Center. Her research at the lab at UK focuses on addressing the past and present of the construction industry while maintaining a positive vision for the future, focusing on digital project delivery, transportation asset management, digital twins, artificial intelligence, workforce development, and organizational change. Over to you, Hala.
Thank you, Fiona. Okay. I hope my slides are coming through.
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome, fantastic. Good day, everyone. So excited to be joining this TAM webinar series today to discuss the results of NCHRP Synthesis 5406 on ancillary asset data stewardship and data models, led by our team here at the University of Kentucky and the Kentucky Transportation Center. This synthesis set out to document how state DOTs are approaching data stewardship and data models for ancillary assets. The final report has already been published, and if you're interested in exploring the details, you can access it on the NCHRP website or simply scan the QR code in the top right corner of the slide. For today's presentation, I'd like to focus on some of the key highlights from the synthesis. And to start, let's look at the scope. So when we talk about ancillary assets, the range is quite broad. To narrow our focus, our team reviewed the FHWA handbook along with other resources. And guided by the feedback that we received from our synthesis panel, which consisted of state DOT personnel as well as an academic, we identified 38 permanent ancillary assets to include in this study. These assets, as you can see on this slide, span different types of work such as drainage, guardrails, signals, traffic management, and many others. Following the identification of the 38 ancillary assets that we wanted to feature in the study, and based on the scope of the synthesis, we developed a survey to investigate ancillary asset practices, specifically what asset data is being collected, how and when data is being collected, and who the data stewards are. The survey also looked into ancillary asset challenges and opportunities. If you recall from my earlier slide, the 38 ancillary assets are very diverse and, of course, span different divisions and departments within state DOTs. So for our audience, we decided to send the survey to the AASHTO Committee on Maintenance for distribution to the appropriate personnel within the agency. We developed an online version of the survey as well as a fillable PDF just to make it easier and more accessible. And here, I know that the synthesis has already been published, but I do want to take a moment to thank everyone who participated in this study. We had a monster survey that could take up to an hour to complete and often required collaboration from multiple individuals to provide feedback. So if you are in attendance and you've completed our survey, thank you so much. In total, we collected 39 responses from the following 39 state DOTs, providing a good coverage of ancillary asset practices. So our survey participants were mostly in the Asset Data Management Division or Maintenance Preservation Division, but as this graph shows, we had participants from many other divisions such as the Geographic Information, Highway Design, and CAD Support divisions. Now, moving on to the ancillary asset practices. We asked the respondents to indicate the collection status of the 38 ancillary assets, and the results are displayed in this heat map. There is a lot to unpack here. There's truly a lot that this visual is communicating, but I'll just highlight the key observations. The heat map shows that for most ancillary assets, state DOTs reported that asset data is important and is being collected. One asset to highlight in specific is traffic management ITS equipment only, which was the most selected asset for which data is important and is being collected. As part of the synthesis, we conducted some case examples following the survey. And we did case examples with Michigan, Minnesota, Utah, Nevada, and West Virginia DOTs. And the data that we collected from them through the case examples revealed that ITS was the first ancillary asset that many state DOTs started collecting and managing within their systems. So it was kind of assuring to hear that perspective and to see it also reflected in the national data. Guardrail assets and pavement markings and striping emerged as assets that more agencies consider important and for which data will be collected in the future. Also, the case example we did with the agencies showed that there is an increased interest in collecting guardrail data for safety requirements. And then when we talked to Utah DOT, they mentioned that their current LiDAR effort captures several information and data in its range, including guardrail. So that was a motivation or a reason for them to start collecting and managing guardrail data as well, since it's already being collected. Switching gears to asset data that is not important and will not be collected, landscaping, according to the respondents, was the most selected asset. Respondents who indicated that ancillary asset data is important but is not currently being collected were asked to elaborate on the reasons for not collecting this data. And as you can see in this figure, the limited asset management infrastructure and staff resources, as well as the unavailability of funding, were the top two reasons. And although the survey was distributed a couple of years ago, I would still say if we do the same survey and we ask the same question today, those two might still be the top two reasons for not collecting and managing data. Of the agencies that we interviewed, Minnesota and Michigan DOTs are two agencies that are considered to be advanced in their ancillary asset data practices, and they both emphasize that establishing a financial plan and having commitment of funds going forward is essential to have a strong asset management program. So the comment that both of these agencies made reinforces the concerns shared in the national survey. State DOTs were asked to indicate the data content of the data being collected, and from this heat map, geospatial data is collected the most. And state DOTs appear to place importance on geospatial data for drainage systems, safety systems, or guardrail, and signs. The heat map also shows that state DOTs rarely collect remote inventory data or generate an asset design model or an asset as-built model. And I'm aware of a handful of NCHRP efforts as well as other research efforts in this space to move more towards asset design models and as-built models. Respondents were also asked about the format of collected asset data, and the heat map shows that most of the data is in a GIS geodatabase or in a database or unique software or program. Excel spreadsheet format is used less frequency, and then something that we want to see, paper-based or PDF format is rarely used. When we talk about ancillary asset data collection, we cannot really ignore data standardization and data quality. And that's when we talk about data dictionaries that encompass detailed descriptions of asset data and their condition specification needs. So we asked our survey respondents to indicate the percentage of assets for which their agency has a data dictionary or is developing one. And the results showed that only 14% of the respondents said that 75 to 100% of their ancillary assets have a data dictionary, with the majority reporting that less than 25% of their ancillary assets have data dictionaries. So these results show that there is more work that is needed in this area. And then the graph on the right shows that state DOTs are working toward developing more data dictionaries for their ancillary assets. So the awareness and the importance of developing data dictionaries is definitely there. Now, software and tools are needed to manage ancillary assets, and we asked the respondents about the type of software they are using or their agency is using. And this slide is not meant to be an eye test, but it shows the diverse system tools used across different phases, from design to construction to maintenance to management. And this slide really communicates well the interoperability challenge that we view as the villain that's preventing the advancement of digital delivery. And I think also what this slide tells us is that collaboration between agencies and technology vendors is a must to streamline data collection, data analysis, and data management. And thankfully, there have been a handful of efforts between state DOTs and vendors to bridge that gap between their needs and what's currently available in the market. So it's always rewarding to see things moving in that direction. Everything I have covered so far was just a glimpse into what data is being collected. We also asked respondents about the collection method, the how of asset inventory and condition data for each of the 38 ancillary assets. And I believe these results are no surprise to anyone. For most ancillary asset classes, data is collected manually using handheld devices, GPS units, or pen and paper-based records. Data is rarely collected using remote tools such as photo, video logs, or automatically by vehicle equipped with technologies. Regarding the update method, the results are similar to the collection methods, showing that data is updated manually for the most part for the 38 ancillary assets. Data is rarely updated using remote or automatically. Moving from the how to the when, we asked respondents to indicate during which phase of the asset life cycle the asset data is collected. And the heat map shows that asset data is mostly collected during asset maintenance, less frequently during construction or as-built, and rarely during design. The case examples we conducted also support these results, where the advanced state DOTs, Minnesota and Michigan, shared that they are still working to figure out how to close the loop between design, construction, as-built, and maintenance. Respondents' answers regarding data stewards are positive, with over half of the responding agencies indicating that they have data stewards. And given that every agency is different or has its own structure and resources, the primary bureaus or divisions for data stewardship vary across agencies, which from a broader digital delivery perspective indicates that there needs to be a high-level coordination between the different divisions to evolve and make progress as a unit, as an agency. The top challenges associated with ancillary asset data collection include challenges with the allocation of resources for collecting the data, challenges with labor shortages and the allocation of skilled staff to collect the data, and challenges with automating data collection or providing supporting technology. We also asked about the top challenges associated with ancillary asset data management in addition to collection. And the top challenges here include discontinuity in data integration, absence of data management dictionaries, standards, and guidelines, which also supports the results we saw previously, inadequate maintenance and management of asset data quality, and absence of database linkage with transportation asset management systems. So that was kind of a quick overview of the NCHRP results and following the data that we collected from the synthesis and many of the existing work on digital delivery, the researcher in me thought that there needs to be a more holistic approach to discussing data. So I would like to present to you a data dose framework. This work is still in its early stages, but I just thought that this platform is a good opportunity to put this work out there and hopefully collect some feedback. So the data dose framework builds on existing standards and methodologies and consists of 4 steps. Step 1, define assets through the lens of data. Step 2, organize asset data into the asset data context. Step 3, strategize with a data governance plan. And step 4, execute with a data management plan. I'll briefly introduce these 4 steps. So step 1 aligns with ISO 19650. And its genesis is to understand, the genesis of this first step is that in order to understand the assets themselves, it is important to learn about the asset-related decision from the subject matter experts who possess the specialized knowledge. So identifying and engaging the individuals within the state DOTs who are responsible for the overall performance of the asset needs to be a priority. So some questions that need to be considered during this stage include, are there regulatory or safety requirements that should be monitored? Are there specific failure modes or degradation patterns that can be monitored? Does the asset reliability and its remaining useful life need to be tracked? Or is real-time monitoring necessary or needed to ensure optimal asset performance? So this understanding of what asset data can enable about the asset itself reinforces an important habit of beginning with the end in mind and enabling DOTs to define their data requirements accurately and design effective data collection processes. Once assets have been defined and understood through the lens of their data, the next step is to understand asset data. And this step is crucial before a state DOT can effectively govern or manage its data, as it aims to identify potential data gaps, redundancies, or inconsistencies, which are essential for effective data governance and management. So for this step, we propose a 6-layer approach for asset data context to comprehensively map asset data at different levels of granularity. And this exercise should be a collaborative effort between different individuals, internal and external stakeholders. Once the asset data is clearly understood and mapped, state DOTs need to use this data to make better decisions about managing their assets. So a strong data governance plan is key to making this work. It sets clear rules about the processes to ensure that data is of high quality, secure, and easy to use. The data governance plan is the 3rd step in the data dose framework, and it's a method to improve how state DOTs handle data. So the plan is divided into 5 key aspects: laying the foundation, setting up the basics for managing data well, assigning roles and processes, defining who's responsible and how things will get done, creating policies and standards, building rules that align with the goals of the agency, setting standards or using clear guidelines to put the plan into action, and improving over time through continuous improvement, regular check, and improving how data is managed. So by focusing on these areas, state DOTs can turn their data into a powerful tool for better decision-making and planning. And lastly, the final step of the data dose framework is the data management plan, which enables the systematic leveraging of data to drive decision-making. So the data management plan organizes data with clear strategies for collecting, storing, analyzing, and using the data. And the proposed plan follows an 8-step process to treat data as a valuable asset. And this holistic approach supports planning with data-driven simulations, spots potential issues early, balances short-term and long-term goals, and promotes transparency and accountability. So data dose is still a work in progress, but we're excited to turn it into a practical platform for state DOTs. And I thought this webinar is the perfect spot for a shameless plug of our research. So if you're interested in learning more or want to contribute, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. So thank you so much for tuning in.
All right. Thank you, Hala. Thank you for sharing the extra. That was interesting. Our final presenter is Dr. Aimee Flannery. Dr. Flannery has over 30 years of transportation experience, including multimodal operational analysis, safety modeling and assessment, ITS evaluation, preliminary design, and risk and resilience analysis and modeling. Aimee has spent the past 12 years of her career leading quantitative risk and resilience modeling and assessment for multiple state DOTs and has led national research on the topic for TRB. She has been Jacobs Global Principal since 2022, serving as Principal Investigator for multiple projects, including the NCHRP 20-32 Transportation Asset Risk and Resilience that she's going to share with us. Aimee.
Thanks, Yana. Let me get my screen going here. And I'm cute. The puppies are barking in the background. Are you able to see my screen?
We see, oh, now it's in full mode. Perfect.
Perfect. All righty. Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you about NCHRP 2332. as Yana, excuse Yana just mentioned. Of course, my voice is going to go out. I won't spend too much time on this slide. You are all familiar with the NCHRP program. You know, it's been around since about 1962, and it's a primary way that state DOTs fund research that either comes through an AASHTO committee or a Federal Highway Administration or an AASHTO council. And roughly $30 to $35 million of research is funded annually. This project that we're talking about here today, here's the objectives of the project. Click through these real quick and get them all up. Nope, go back one. Primary purpose of the project is to generate a science-based technical resource to help agencies in the quantitative assessment of risk and resilience, to support agencies in planning, design, construction, operations, and maintenance decisions. We're drawing heavily on historical data and on readily available data sets. The manual will have both quantitative methodologies for both risk assessment and resilience assessment. And ideally, at the end of the day, AASHTO will consider the manual and the methodologies for adoption as a standard. This project is a part of a larger overall project that was conceived by AASHTO. We're in the first phase of the project. We're actually in the middle of developing the manual itself, and then ideally we'll have an implementation phase and a phase that will focus on developing GIS script to allow the methodologies that are in the manual to be incorporated into a GIS type tool. And so those overall are viewed as being something that will take us through about 2027, 2028. And you can see overall around a $7 million project. The current project that we're in is a $3.5 million project with an additional $500,000 provided by US DOT. Here is the framework that we are following to develop the models for risk and resilience. It is actually built upon NCHRP 2309, which was a scoping study completed a few years ago that laid the groundwork for how would we develop a methodology that is standard for multiple threat asset pairs to model the risk that's anticipated in terms of financial losses, should these events occur, and also how would we model resilience. Again, we're leaning heavily not only in our project panel, but we benefit from an AASHTO task force, which Anna actually helps lead for us. And the task force has another additional 10 or so members in addition to our project panel that are overseeing the development of the manual. We are currently in task 6, and we are in the middle of phase 2 for this first larger project, and we're set to wrap up phase 2 in May of 26, and overall the project will wrap up in November of 27. So the final project deliverables will be the first of its kind manual for surface transportation to be considered for adoption by AASHTO, and that manual will include quantitative assessment methodologies for both risk and resilience for multiple threat asset pairs, which I'll talk about in a minute. Also a final report to document, of course, the outcomes of the project, research findings, and key recommendations for future research, including research needs problem statements. And then also a standalone memorandum that will help support CEOs and executives in how this methodology can support them and how they might consider adopting it within their agencies. One of the things that we're focused on within the project is that we fully understand as a team that risk and resilience assessments are helpful all the way through the project development lifecycle. So early on in planning activities, preliminary engineering, detailed design, and certainly asset and maintenance activities. So one of the things we've really been focusing on within the manual to develop is how do we support the analysts throughout that lifecycle, and what data is available to the analysts throughout that lifecycle. So as you might imagine, your data improves as you get closer to preliminary engineering and detailed design, and maybe you don't have as much information about the threats and the assets that you're seeking to manage or build when you're in the planning stages. And so we've been focusing on developing methodologies that support the analyst at what we're calling 3 different levels. So level 3 is really focused on planning and that initial screening of, if you'll have 2,000 bridges across my system, and I want to figure out which of those are, most at risk for a particular event, maybe flooding, how can I hone in and sort of narrow the scope of those 2,000 bridges to focus in on maybe a smaller subset? So we have level 3 models that are going to help you through that analysis for all the threat asset pairs. Level 2 is when we think we have a little bit more data available, and we're looking heavily at national data sets and things like NBI data sets, which you already are collecting that information. And we're folding in what information you might have either through asset databases that you're required to share with Federal Highway, for example, and also national data sets that might be available for things like various threats. Like I mentioned, it could be something related to storm surge or something related to flooding. Where can you get that data for that particular asset at a national set that you yourself don't have to collect as an agency? And then our level 1 really hones in when you have very detailed information. So think things like H&H assessments. You've done a full hydraulic analysis at the particular asset, or you've done a little bit more detailed design and what you think you're going to put in place or what you are considering for a replacement asset. And we're going to support the analyst again for risk and resilience quantitative assessments from level 3 through level 1. An example of this, this is a example application for, in this case, it is, I gotta remember which one this is, flood bridge, I believe is what I have here. And so looking at how your data is going to improve. Oh, I'm sorry, this is roadway erosion and flooding. So when you're thinking about sort of roadway erosion and flooding at the planning stages, the best information you might have might just be whether or not that road is near some particular fluvial network. As you move down into an assessment that's, you've gone through the first filter, and maybe you're looking at, how close is, a handful of roadway sections to a particular stream bed, and what is the potential risk that could be there? And you might be able to calculate something known as stream power. And then finally, all the way down to level 1, you've identified maybe 3 or 4 areas across your system that are most at risk that you want to consider for further design considerations. Level 1 assessments are there to help you go through that project level design and look at different design alternatives to reduce that risk as you move into final design. Some of the other things I mentioned that we're trying to keep track of are the data sources that you're going to be drawing into the analysis. So this again is erosion and roadway embankment. And these are some of the data sources that we're drawing upon to help you get through the analysis. So just to give you some sense of, we're drawing upon, nationally available data sets. We're also, when it's appropriate, leaning into H&H tools and data that may be available. Calculations of something known as max stream power, which doesn't require a full H&H, but it might require a little bit of information from a GIS analyst. So each one of the threat asset pairs that are in the manual will include this sort of overview of the data sets that you're going to need to use as you step through the application. And just to give you a sense again on these level 3 to level 1 vulnerability assessments that are included in the risk calculations, in this case, you can see this is an example that was something that Colorado DOT developed a few years ago, where you were using more generic information like it's rolling terrain or it's mountainous terrain, and you're looking at a roadway embankment potential, erodibility potential, and that's actually a data set that's available from AASHTO. And so drawing those two pieces of information together, you can come up with a vulnerability factor within this table. So you can imagine that if you're drawing upon readily available data sets, it's probably not exact, but it's going to give you some sense of where you want to hone in and where you want to focus in on your risk assessments for maybe a smaller subset of assets. Also within the manual, we're moving towards what in our level 1 assessments, we're bringing in very robust modeling, in particular for things like pavements and bridges, because we have the ability to do this. The simulation tools are out there to look at multiple combinations of factors. And so in this case, we're developing things known as fragility curves, which support vulnerability modeling. And those draw in things known as FEA modeling. And this is finite element analysis, to where we have multiple combinations of stressors and bridge design considerations. And we're looking at different damage states that could occur when these 2 or 3 combinations of things happen. And from here, we can actually develop fragility curves that you, the analyst, just need to know a few pieces of information, which are shown here on the graph. And for example, you can go in and look at a particular anticipated damage state that could occur if a particular storm surge, in this case, of a particular magnitude were to occur. And so these are a little bit more detailed, and they can support you when you're at that level 1 analysis. And we also have the ability to do this type of modeling because we have made, as an industry, really solid investments in simulation tools for pavement and bridges. Some of the other threat asset pairs, you might imagine, we don't have this sort of ability yet. So I mentioned that we're calculating both risk and resilience. And so this is an example of the blow up of that framework that I showed you earlier. These are the assessment portions of the methodology or the framework. And so when you're in looking at the vulnerability, the consequences, and the threat probability, to be able to calculate risk from a dollars and cents perspective, we're going to support you as the analyst to give you either direction on how to calculate the replacement cost of your asset, or perhaps a default value. Looking at the vulnerability, which I just went over a second ago, we're going to have either lookup tables or fragility curves available to you as the analyst. And then also the threat probability. That information, we're going to point you to national data sets, and also suggest, if you have your own data, how you can supplement national data sets to get to your probability of an event occurring. This is just an example of how the fragility curves are anticipated to work. And this is showing that if you have particular information about a flood magnitude that could be occurring, and you want to look at minor, moderate damage, severe damage, or complete damage, how the fragility curves can help you pull off a particular vulnerability factor from these charts on the left and populate it within your calculation of risk. And so in this case, you can see a particular flood event, in this case, a 500-year flood event, is anticipated to only have a probability of having a damage data of about 0.26 or 26% probability of minor damage at this particular asset, whereas complete loss of the bridge for a 500-year event at this location is found to be about a 14% probability of having that damage state. In this case, the picture above is actually Hurricane Helene that came through and did damage this particular bridge. And as you all know, Hurricane Helene was in the neighborhood of about a 200 or 2,000 year flood event. And so these probabilities here are actually for a 500-year flood event. That bridge would have been expected to survive. But in this case, a 2,000-year flood event, the bridge was completely lost. This is just an example of walking through how you would calculate annualized risk. You would take those probabilities of the different damage dates and bring them together with the consequences that are anticipated from each of those losses, and the probability of a particular flood event magnitude that you're looking at, and be able to calculate an annual risk for this particular bridge from a 500-year flood event. Ideally, this type of information at some point in the future will be outside of a manual and into like a GIS script, where we can begin to sort of batch process, all of the bridges that you may have in a particular district or region, or potentially across your system. And so that's the direction that the overall project is moving towards. But in this first phase, we're looking at development of the manual, consideration of AASHTO for adoption as a standard, and then in the future, we'll look at piloting and developing those types of GIS modeling or GIS script. Colorado DOT has used this type of information for risk calculation in their culvert prioritization process. And so this is just showing you like one application of taking this risk information. An agency can fold it into things like, we have a prioritization program that looks at age or particular location of an asset, but now we can also look at it through the lens of risk from natural hazards or resilience in terms of, if that particular culvert fails, what might be the impact to the traveling public in terms of moving across the system. And we're able to calculate risk in dollars and cents, as well as the impact to travelers from a resilience metric that looks at dollars and cents of sort of the inconvenience of closures and detours. So the next steps, the models are being refined and completed. We do have multiple workshops left in the project. The manual is being drafted, and the project will be completed in November 26th, and then considered for adoption by AASHTO in 27. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions and hand it back to Yana.
All right, thank you, Aimee. So we appreciate all the presenters taking the time to share their expertise. We would like to shift to our Q&A session, And so if all of our presenters could come on camera, that would be great. And let's start with Arnold Yuan. Arnold, you had a question first for Abhijit and one for Hala, which I know you've had the communication on the chat, but I think that it would be good for everyone to hear both the question and the responses and have the possibility for a discussion. Arnold, are you there?
It looks like Arnold has dropped off the meeting.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, he did put his question in. So, his first question was for Abhijit, and he was asking about how the research that was featured in the first presentation can be applied in asset management, and if you could elaborate a bit more about that.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for the question. I believe that means in our findings from the literature, where the asset management and artificial intelligence, we have find a very strong correlation, and means the effect of artificial intelligence on that. And you can find the details of like which components of artificial intelligence are important in the report, which starts from page 35. Specifically, we have seen that means numerical analysis, statistical methods, as well as like intelligent sensors. These has been some of the areas that slowly growing up in order to get asset management problem solved for this. Detailed graphs are and like step-by-step instructions for that are present in our report. If you want to go a little bit deeper, we can probably provide you with the specific literature that we went through when we were looking at those. But our general understanding is that those are the topic areas that should be emphasized in order to solve this problem.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next question from Arnold was to Hala, and so he wanted to ask about an issue of ancillary asset data for primary assets that are not traditionally integrated into the asset management system. Is there any work done on this aspect?
Yeah, so compared to pavements and bridges, ancillary assets are considered to be the low-hanging fruit, just because they don't have their own funding mechanism. So we currently are conducting NCHRP 2341, which focuses on technology and asset management. And we're really covering all three types of assets, bridges, pavements, and ancillary assets. What we've uncovered so far is very few agencies are collecting and reporting on ancillary asset data in their TAMP, Transportation Asset Management Plan. So we're reaching out to those agencies, learning about how they're doing it. We're also talking to other agencies that for the time being, they might be collecting ancillary assets and using it internally for decision making, but they're not reporting on that data to FHWA in their TAMP. So we're trying to collect more data on ancillary assets. Funding and time always seems to be the issue. So we're just trying to learn from the agencies doing it. And I know that Minnesota is one of those agencies. Iowa is also significantly increasing the number of assets that they are managing and reporting on in their TAMP. So we're trying to collect those best practices, and the work will be published in a couple of years.
Great, thank you, Hala. Aimee, I was curious about when the TAM community could expect to actually get value from the research you're conducting. I know that a lot of times, you can't share until the project's over in the typical NCHRP process, but I'm curious if there are going to be efforts to share more before it's completed.
Yeah, so we actually are doing a workshop next week at the TAM conference. We're going to be talking a little bit more about some of really, I think we're going to use it as an opportunity to ask questions of the community to say, to your point, how can you envision using this to make sure that in those stages when we're writing, we can actually incorporate those examples. And so we have about roughly a little bit over a year of writing time that's going to be coming up. So we want to use this opportunity now to gather those inputs from the practitioner to make sure we're incorporating them in the manual itself. We anticipate if we turn over the final report in November of 26, I would hope that TRB would be able to get it out by, say, the first or second quarter of 27. So it's not too far away. I know that sounds like a lot of time, and it's not too far away in our world. And we are gearing up to do as many workshops as we can get on the agendas in TRB, both 26 and 27. So we're trying to take advantage of any committee meeting that may be there with AASHTO or TRB meetings, and trying to make sure that we're kind of beating the drum about the project that's coming out to make sure that people are aware of it, and then also that we're getting their feedback before we go into final writing.
Cool. Abhijit, you mentioned at the start of your presentation that you were really conducting this research in 2021 and completed, I think, in 2022-ish timeframe, right? And that a lot has happened since then in AI, especially with large language models. I'm curious if you could summarize what you think would be this kind of research today versus what you actually did.
So I believe that means in many of the cases, there are certain area of artificial intelligence which has changed, and means if I have to redo this project again, and particularly for the literature review, maybe there are few aspects will still be same, but means few aspects will change. So for example, like the sensor technologies, I believe that the sensor technology and any of the findings that we have related to that, that will still remain the same. Because the initial way that the sensor data are collected, managed, and preserved, they are still same. So the backbone is still there. However, where it really revolutionized is like how different modality comes together. So like previously, we used to do research only maybe on image-based system or maybe a text-based system. But at this point, we can actually input an image as well as a text, and sometimes a video and a text together. And in many ways, we communicate this multimodal way, right? So in this one as well, we are listening as well as we are seeing. Now, all these large visual language models and many of the foundational models, they are really looking into bringing this together. So I believe that that's where any of the solution space where multimodal systems are very much prevalent, there has been a revolution there. And that's where maybe some of the new ideas can come up. It can be maybe crash reconstruction or crash analysis, or maybe some of the other asset management side as well, because there are many cases we collect a lot of sensor data, but at the same time, we do a lot of survey. Now, how to do this two together and bring this together, maybe that's where some of the new areas of research can come up. So that has been a little bit of my understanding for the following the last 3-4 years of artificial intelligence group.
Thanks, Abhijit. Hala, you also touched a little bit on AI in this space with ancillary assets. I'm curious what your kind of forward-thinking thoughts are about the impact AI is going to have in the management of ancillary assets.
That has been a topic of discussion in our NCHRP 2341 project, and I know that our panel members are extremely interested in us incorporating AI and machine learning into our reports. For the time being, from the data that we have collected so far, and we've only been doing this work for 6 months, There is interest mostly in predictive models for assets to better handle resource allocation. That has been, I would say, the priority for AI modeling. There is also a lot of interest in how can we leverage AI to better collect and check the quality of the data. So an example that has been shared with us is LiDAR. LiDAR collects a lot of data, and then you require a human to go through the data points that have been collected in the data sets and check the quality, see if you have duplication, see if you can rely on that data. I know of an agency that started experimenting with AI to process LiDAR data, and they did find some successes, but they have not been able to fully rely on AI to process the data and check for quality. So those have been a couple of the areas that have been identified, but I do see AI being something that could be touched on in data collection, data processing, data quality, and data visualization, as well as analysis.
Thanks, Hala. Aimee, how about you? Are you guys looking at all at the impact of AI in this space, in the resilience management side?
We're not yet, but actually it's interesting. I think some of the threat data, I actually just saw a study from Cambridge University that's looking at AI and looking at landslide, predicting when landslides would occur. And so that's something I think that's emerging. And so one of the things we'll do, I mentioned at the end of the study and in our final report, is include recommendations for future research. We view the manual as being something like the highway capacity manual, the highway safety manual, something that will have additions in the future. And so we want to point towards, those improving data sources, in particular for not only assets, but also threats. So being able to improve the prediction of when those events will occur, what the magnitude might be, and then of course, how the assets would perform. So I think it's coming. It's not quite there. We also have some restrictions on what we're allowed to talk about in terms of threat data, but we're working through that. So
yeah. Yes, we see the potential, right? And we'll see some of the research results hopefully in the not too distant future. Hala, there's a question about the need for additional funding from DOTs, if you could respond to that.
Absolutely. I was just typing in my response. So the collection of data to be used and to be leveraged for decision making will require additional funding. And that's mostly when we talk about capturing inventory data, capturing condition and performance data. So that is where more funding is needed for ancillary assets, because the focus so far has been on bridges and pavement for FHWA requirement. Now, when it comes to maintenance records and unit costs, those practices from what we have seen in state DOTs vary widely, because maintenance or ancillary asset data are regulated in a way or overseen by districts or regions within state DOTs, and the practices are not standardized across the agency. So that's why I'm not really able to answer that question with a clear yes and no. Just knowing that ancillary assets are handled by maintenance staff, and within agencies, the districts or the regions, they do have more oversight over their own practices and how they collect that data. So kind of talking about that more centralized, I would say database for ancillary asset could be more challenging compared to bridges and pavements.
All right, thank you for that. All right, so thank you everybody, and let's just close out the webinar. So our next TAM webinar will be held on October 15, 2025 at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The topic will be Advanced Technologies for TAM and TPM. More information will be provided as it gets closer to the date of this webinar, and we hope you'll be able to join us. If you have ideas for what could be featured, feel free to email me or Anna McLaughlin, and we will put that into the consideration bucket. Additional webinars will be continuing, scheduled every 2 months. And so also, if you have ideas for future webinars, please send them. We typically do webinar planning for the year at the end of the year for the following year. So now you're getting into the time where it'll be nice to have your ideas there. And so as a final reminder, please visit tam-portal.com to see the resources from this webinar as well as past webinars and many, many more things as well. Thank you. Bye-bye.